Hi, everyone, and happy Juneteenth. Brittany, I'm excited that you're here as well. I think you're the first person to sign on, which is great. I hope everybody can hear me well, and happy Juneteenth. So I'm going to get started, giving more people time to get on to the live stream. And the purpose of today, this is the federally recognized holiday of Juneteenth. Juneteenth was officially the 19th, which was yesterday, June 19th. But we're going to go ahead and talk about that. I want to talk about a little bit about the history of home ownership in the Black community. I'm also going to answer any of your questions. So please start your questions in the chat, and hopefully we all come away with something today. So put your questions in the chat. Thank you so much for joining me. Those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Shaheedah Hill, getting you over the hill to home ownership and helping you confidently buy your first home. If this is your first time to the channel, this is a live stream, but I have a lot of videos on about home ownership, buying the home, every part of the process, and just home ownership and the housing market in general. So I hope that you will subscribe. All right, thank you, everyone. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Cameron, how you doing? Now, I used to be a teacher. Cameron's reminding me to say that. So I used to be a teacher as well. I was a teacher for 14 years, but I had my real estate license, kind of did it together, and kind of put those two things together. Teaching and real estate, it kind of goes hand in hand, especially for first-time home buyers. So Cameron, thank you so much for that. All right, so let's get started just on what is Juneteenth, if you don't know, because a lot of people may be hearing it for the first time. So I want to do that first. All right, Juneteenth, short for June 19th, to kind of put those two things together, marks the day when federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas. So Texas has been celebrating Juneteenth for a while. In 1865 to take control of the state and ensure that all enslaved people would be freed. The troops' arrival came a full 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. So they didn't get word because, again, it wasn't like today's day and age, right, where everybody knows everything at the drop of a dime. So they didn't know until this time in Texas. So it's to be celebrated because this is truly when everybody, at least as far as slavery is concerned, was free. Okay, so Juneteenth honors the end to slavery in the United States and is considered the longest running African-American holiday. On June 17th, 2021, it officially became a federal holiday. So, and I think you're getting a lot more, celebrations, a lot more information about it because we're kind of out of the pandemic for the most part. And so this is the first time that you could have like a lot of large gatherings and that sort of thing. So I think, even though it was signed into law last year, you're getting a lot more recognition of the holiday in 2022 as opposed to 2021. All right, so that's the history of Juneteenth. But one thing you have to think about, and please put any questions in the comments, one thing that you have to think about is, okay, and I'm a descendant of, slaves in the United States. And you have to think about, and I thought about this, taking my dad to dinner for Father's Day yesterday. It's like, how many generations are we truly out of slavery? And it was maybe 4 generations. So like my I did this yesterday, I wrote it down, my great-great-grandmother, right? I think it was only 2 greats, he said. So we're not that many generations. It might be about 4 generations out of slavery, depending on your age, of course. We're not that many generations out of slavery. And I hope the more recognition this holiday gets, especially for young people, that they recognize just how far African Americans in this country have come and the struggle it is to buy a house. While we're screaming that, we're so happy when we buy a house for the first time. We're so happy at graduations. We're so happy at these moments because it wasn't so long ago when we weren't able to do these things. We weren't able to go to college. We weren't able to buy a house. We weren't able to purchase land. So it's still a really, really big deal. I think in our culture, it's just it's still a big deal. And I think, not enough people know that. So I want to talk to you about, let's all discuss together, of course. So put any questions or any comments in in the chat. But let's really kind of talk about home ownership and maybe some of the challenges that you may have in home ownership. Okay. So I see everybody saying it's, thank you so much. Yes, please like this video. I really appreciate it. Hi, Miss Butterscotch. Hello, everyone. Yes, it is still a struggle. It's still a struggle. But I think even in the struggle, I think if you kind of think about what our ancestors went through, it's like, I feel like just keep on pushing. Keep on pushing. It was way more difficult for them. So let's keep on pushing to achieve home ownership for your, one thing, I watched that special yesterday and it said, you are somebody's ancestor, behave accordingly. And so I thought that was pretty powerful. I forgot the poet. Please don't. If somebody knows who it is, put it in the comments. But there was like a big celebration that was broadcast. And the poet said, you are somebody's ancestor, behave accordingly. So even though it's difficult now to purchase your home, you still want to be in it. Like, I don't want you to give up. I don't want you may have to, like I said, I told people in one of my last videos, there's no rush, but there's still going to be that goal of home ownership, because once you own something, it's very, it's something you could pass down. It's something that you can use. And home ownership, different from your 401k and your Roth IRA, you can't live in those things. So it serves two purposes. You can live in your house, and it's also an investment for your future and for your descendants' future. Because a lot of people that have grandparents and parents that have homes now, that's going to benefit you in the future just through generational wealth. It will benefit you. So again, you are somebody's ancestor, behave accordingly. I thought that was very good. All right, thank you so much. So let's talk about one thing. It's still a big deal. I'll try to get as many of you on here as possible. Let's see. Monique said, yes, it is still a big deal. Yes, it is still a big deal. And I really want, if you haven't already, a lot of you need to know the history of home ownership in your family. Who was the first person to, buy a house? Who was the first person that was able to purchase the property? How were they able to do it? Those types of things you want to discuss and have those conversations. Was it difficult? Did they try and give up? Because there was a time in history where we could purchase a home, but only in certain neighborhoods, only in certain areas. The interest rates were higher. There was redlining. All of those things were, deterrents to purchase and to own things. So I think it's very important that you know your own family's history of home ownership, and then we'll be less likely as African Americans to give those homes away. Your grandmother, your great grandmother, if they did own property, they worked hard for it. It wasn't an easy thing for them to purchase property in the Jim Crow South or in different parts of the country. So the fact that they had a property, especially with gentrification going on in almost every major city now, you want to make sure, and that's why I had, like for Black History Month, I had the lawyer on talking about protecting your legacy, to make sure you have wills in place, to make sure you have a trust in place, because a lot of families are losing their homes because the family can't get together to pay the taxes. The house might be paid off, but y'all can't agree to pay the taxes on that house. So we want to make sure that you're protecting the legacy that was left for you, because a lot of people, you may have a generational wealth that is coming to you, but it's lost because it's not transferred properly. So let's make sure we're doing that as well. All right, so thank you so much, NW. Thank you for coming, catching my live. I appreciate it. I really do. So go ahead and put your questions in there. I'm gonna talk about a couple of more things. All right, so a lot of people that stayed in the South. So there was a great migration, of course, to the North, because people didn't want to be in the South, just being free, that sort of thing. So a lot of people that stayed in the South, a lot of them were sharecroppers. So they rented land from the white owners, they raised crops, and they had to sell it to maybe their former slave masters, the landowners, and there was a lot that went on with that. So a lot of people, if you stayed in the South, your grandparents, your great grandparents, they might have been sharecroppers at that time, and they may have gotten some kind of land, but sometimes they were able to buy it, but sometimes they had to it was just rented to them so they could work the land because they still needed labor. So a lot of families, even though they migrated north, a lot of families, not a lot, but some families still have property or land in the South. So if you do have that, there's another reason you have to talk as a family to see, do you have any land that your family owns that might have been left to you that was in the South when a lot of people migrated north for more opportunities, for employment, for that sort of thing. So you really want to start talking in your family about that. Keep on putting your questions in the comments. So after, one of the big things that a lot of people don't realize is that after the Great Depression, the FHA was created. So the Federal Housing Administration was created to try to spur economic development in the country. So they wanted people to buy homes, and they also wanted to help banks because banks had pretty much, collapsed. So they were going to insure mortgages now. This is the first time that the government was going to come in and insure the mortgage. So kind of to provide some backup to the bank if somebody defaulted, okay? So the FHA was created in 1934, but it wasn't created for Black people. It was created for white people because in the underwriting of FHA loans, it said the requirement was that they had to be homogeneous communities, which meant we're not mixing Black and white communities. And when those suburbs, so they left the cities because there was more land in the suburbs. So they built communities, FHA-backed loans for those mortgages. They gave FHA loans to primarily white communities to build these suburbs. So that's why when you think about why they're Black communities and white communities are predominantly Black or predominantly white communities, FHA was a big part of that. FHA, because they didn't have, white communities didn't have money either after the Great Depression. But what happened was they came in and said, okay, we will subsidize you buying a house, and we will subsidize the builders for buying the house, and we'll back it up with FHA insurance, and we'll make sure the down payment is low. So all of those things, that was a big wealth builder back in the 30s and 40s for people to generate. Well, I would say 30s to like the 70s. We'll talk about the Fair Housing Act. But FHA was not created with African Americans in mind at all. So a lot of wealth, remember, the majority of wealth in America is in someone's home. Okay, that's where the majority of wealth is. But there was a big time period in America where African Americans were not allowed, at least they were allowed to buy property, but not through FHA, which that was a very easy way to obtain property by having a government insured mortgage. So if you did purchase property, it was going to be much more expensive for an African American to do it because they didn't have the benefit of an FHA loan or FHA financing. So when we're talking about FHA now, we will get to redlining. Thank you. Christina's on the chat. Redlining too. Yes, we're going to talk about redlining. I appreciate you being here. So that's one thing. And then, so when we're talking about wealth and why is the home ownership gap so large, and I'll put this up here. This is one of the reasons. Let me put that down. Hold on. One of the reasons we're at about 43%, this is 2021, but we're about 43% of Black home ownership to 74% of white home ownership. Because if you think about it, through those years, wealth was able to be passed down. You could help, your family with, you could help your family with down payment, or you could help them with, student loans. So instead of student loans, maybe you take out a home equity loan, or maybe your grandparents, use their home equity to pay for things, or the money that is left over is left to you. So that wealth, it stops you from having student loans. It may stop you from knowing how to, not having to take on so much debt. Some families, instead, you need 20% down payment. Here's your 20% down payment, because that wealth was passed down from generation to generation. So that's one reason why that gap is so large. I'm not saying that's the only reason, because with not only Jim Crow laws, and somebody's putting that Jim Crow laws and redlining, but also education. So a lot of times education and wealth go together as well. And we were blocked out of a lot of the educational institutions. There, had to be HBCUs and that sort of thing to educate. but there's still going to be that gap. If you don't have enough education, you can't make as much money, you don't have as much opportunities. So all of those things come together to be some roadblocks for, home ownership or buying your first home or saving for the down payment. So I wanted to say that. Let me get back to my banners. And somebody says, my heirs will quickly sell my assets because they live from mouth to mouth. Okay, let me take that down. Let me say this. It says, my heirs will quickly sell my assets because they live from hand to mouth, will not still be able to be taught about wealth building. They only idolize. And so, okay, let me say one thing. I was going to bring this up that I had the pleasure of a family, because during the pandemic, everybody was on Zoom, which was really, really good. So everybody was on Zoom, but one family, they continued with their Zooms once a month, just about wealth, be it how to get a better job. So if somebody was in IT, they might, that was a subject for the family for that week. They'll talk about, how to get a job in IT, how to do this, if you need insurance. So the family would still meet once a month to talk about, different wealth building strategies. So when we're saying that everybody's not at the same mindset on the same level, but if we can't as a family come together, because there's always some people that are doing well or they're educated in certain areas where they can educate other people. So I thought that was a great idea for families to get together and have these Zoom meetings once a month as a family to talk about some of those things, because it may not just be that they are, celebrities and maybe that's all they know and they haven't seen anything else. And as a teacher, I've seen it firsthand. Like I've worked in a lot of different income levels of school, but I spent the majority of my time at a Title I school in a very urban area. So sometimes they're just not exposed to some of the things that we talk about, wealth and stocks and home ownership. They're just not exposed, but once they're exposed to it, they're open to that. So I want just to say that as well. Let me get into the redlining. Please still put your questions into the chat. All right, so talk about redlining. FHA furthered the segregation efforts by refusing to insure mortgages in or near African-American neighborhoods, a policy known as redlining. So there were I wish I brought a picture, but there were actual maps and they would redline, okay, insure mortgages in this area, but don't insure mortgages in this area. So you had, again, another time where a lot of the banks have changed their names, but a lot of the large banks that are still in existence today were part of the redlining. So when you see things like they're offering down payment assistance programs and doing all of these things, because there was a time when they wouldn't, give a mortgage to African American. So a lot of times they're coming back to say, okay, let's try to fix these policies or let's try to make these things right, because they know what was happening at that time. And, that was opportunity again to build wealth. And this is one thing that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. Let's talk about single family zoning. So single family zoning, when a lot of this was coming about and they were building homes and, African Americans were able to establish, a certain amount of money to perhaps, buy their first house, they had to think of something else to keep them to keep their communities homogeneous. So white communities separate from Black communities. They made single family zoning. So when you think about single family, you think about it, just normalize that there's single family homes and there's multifamily homes. But because single family housing was more expensive, like it wasn't that common to have just one house with one family on one plot of land, because a lot of times for cost savings, people moved into multifamily housing. So they made single family zoning. So they knew it was going to be too expensive for a lot of African Americans to live in those types of neighborhoods. So the first single family zoning was in the city of Berkeley, California in 1916. The measure was promoted by the developer of the Elmwood neighborhood who wanted to preserve home value. So they made sure that there were only going to be single family homes in this area, which would make them in turn more expensive. And then lastly, I'm going to stop here with the history lesson, and then I'm going to answer your questions. The enactment of the Federal Fair Housing Act on April 11th, 1968, that was enacted to stop some of the racial discrimination in housing. And that's why when you ask real estate agents now, well, what kind of neighborhood is that? Is that a diverse neighborhood? They shouldn't tell you that, because they shouldn't be steering you. It's called steering. Like, oh, I have a Black family, let me go, take them to the Black neighborhood. Or I have a white family, you don't want to be in this neighborhood, you want to be in this neighborhood. So that's called steering. So if they say you want a house, they just, you just look by price, by whatever. They're not supposed to tell you the demographics, the diversity, whatever of that neighborhood. That's something you would have to do on your own as far as research. But so the Fair Housing Act prevents housing discrimination, and not that it still didn't happen. It still happened. It just wasn't as overt. And sometimes it was overt, but it was a little bit less overt but it was still happening. 60s, 70s, that kind of thing came in after a difficult journey. So at first it was not going to pass. So it was, in Congress going back and forth. But when Martin Luther King was assassinated, that kind of pushed it through Congress, his assassination. So just be mindful of these things in American history that may have prevented your grandparents, your great-grandparents from achieving home ownership much earlier in life. And then like a lot of things are passed down. Okay. So a lot of things are passed down, not just homes, but knowledge as well. But if they never did it, they can't teach you how to do it. So sometimes, that, what I'm trying to say, sometimes those things are lost. So when you're renting your whole life and you've never even thought, a lot of people haven't even thought about purchasing a home because maybe it's never been, seen as attainable for them. So, and that's one thing in our history that we have to acknowledge and say, okay, this is what happened. This is why my grandmother maybe didn't have a house, or my great grandmother didn't have a house, but I can have a house, but I have to start now, or start as early as possible to achieve that as early as possible. Thank you, Sonia Peterson. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. So now I'm going to answer your questions. I'm going to go back up. And somebody said that we don't know the history. There's no way to win the present. This is JB. It's priceless. Yes, we have to know our history, and you have to teach our, children history as well, so they're aware of what's going on. All right. So because again, and like the other viewer said, when you pass it down, somebody said my camera is not focusing. Hold on one second. If you cannot see my camera, because I see it clearly, but somebody else is saying I can't see it clearly. But just put that in the comments if you can't see me clearly. All right, so I'm going back up. So I'll make sure I don't miss any questions. I want to make sure she's one of my first people on. Let's see. Hey, how are you doing? So excited, all the way from Philadelphia. Thank you for joining me. All right, let's see. Making sure I don't miss you. Hi, Curtis. Thank you for loving my videos. All right. Happy Valley says only 18 states recognize the paid holiday. Hopefully that will change. That's what voting's all about. So make sure you're voting. Thank you so much. Let's see. Looking for your questions. Okay. So hello. Have you ever heard of the Neighborhood Stabilization Program? It's a more affordable way for me to purchase a home later this year. Yes, I have heard of it. It is available. So if anybody hasn't heard of it, you should see if your area has the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, and they allow you to buy a home at just different. Everybody's might be a little bit different, but it's usually definitely at a discounted rate, or it has some kind of down payment assistance component to it. So if you haven't heard about that, you might want to Google like Neighborhood Stabilization Program and then put in your city and see what comes up. All righty. All right, let's see. Okay, they're saying that again. It's easy to pass down my home, but what the challenge is, how long will my heirs keep it because of the rising property taxes? I think if they're prepared now, so if they're prepared now to say, okay, these are the property taxes, hopefully they're in a financial position through doing well with their money, doing well with their assets, that they're able to pay those property taxes in the future. But again, we can't just pass away and then say, okay, I hope everything goes well with you guys. We have to put those things in writing now. And then you have to leave it to somebody who's going to be financially responsible, or there's a good chance it will be lost. So if you haven't caught my live stream about preserving your legacy, if you don't have a trust, then you probably want to start working on that trust now so this doesn't happen to you in the future. Thank you so much. And somebody did put it up here. You are somebody's ancestor. Act accordingly. It was Amir Suleiman, poet, writer, producer, TV and film. So if you haven't heard that quote, I thought it was really good. That was from KT Din. Thank you so much for that. Okay. All right. So Curly Girly Bree, thank you for this. Yes, my paternal grandmother owned 9 houses and now they've all been sold since she's passed on this year. Hopefully they've been sold by the family and the wealth was able to be shared. But yeah, to own 9 homes is remarkable, definitely remarkable. Okay, are you having a Zoom call on June 26th? Yes, I am having a June. For people that bought my course, I do have a first-time home buyer course. And for people that bought my course, I am doing a live on June 26th. It's a Sunday. It's this Sunday from, I forget, is it from 5? It's 4 to 6, I believe. But yes, you will get another email as a reminder from me. All right. So thank you so much. First time in the chat. Hi, Ernie. JB saying, loving this topic. It needs to be broadcasted on BET. Put me on BET. We'll see. All right. Hey, Christina. Now, Christina, we've done a live recently with Christina. She's, I would say, the home, what do you call it? The tiny home queen, all of that queen. So if you have not seen Christina's channel, definitely affordable home. So if you're looking for some options around affordability, please watch that. She's great. Thank you so much again. Yep. Somebody said my maternal grandmother was a sharecropper. I remember my grandmother talking about picking tobacco, and I feel like, and it's so, what they say that youth is wasted on the young or whatever. I wish I was paying attention more, but I still remember her talking about her childhood and picking tobacco and those types of things. I just wish that I was wise enough to ask more questions. But if you still have your grandparents, your great grandparents alive, it'll be a good time to talk to them and try to get as much out of them as possible about there's so much wisdom that you almost want to cry as you get older, and the stuff that you didn't get or the time that you didn't spend. So it's very important that we know that. All right. Let me say, okay, can you put a property with a mortgage in a trust while you are still paying the mortgage? Definitely, you can. I have, my husband and I have our mortgage in a trust. So basically, if the difference between a will and a trust is that a will has to go to probate. It has to go in front of a judge. You can't, just in case somebody contests it or whatever. So a will has to go in front of a judge. A trust doesn't. If you die, you're the executor of your trust. Just goes about, handling it as you set forth in your trust documents. So our house is in a trust. So when we die, it doesn't have to now my children get it. Like everything is in the trust, as including the house. Like all your assets get pushed into that trust. So then, okay, you pass away, then your children says, oh, my children get the house, they get the whatever. So everything's in the trust. So yes. And I still have a mortgage. So you can definitely put your mortgage in a trust. Please watch that video that I have. It was a live with an attorney. It's called Protecting Your Legacy. It was a live stream, but watch that. Yeah, please watch. Yeah, please put my likes. Please like this video. I really appreciate it. I know it's a little bit different from what I normally do, but I think it's very important because, again, if we don't know our history, then we won't know, how to get past any challenges that we may have in the future. All right. So says my mother owns her home from Habitat for Humanity. It's hers now. Congratulations. All right, Miss Butterscotch, what you got? Interest rates are still higher in our neighborhoods. This is very true. And I think I always say, not just for everyone, it's good financial practice to get 3 quotes. I think it's double good financial practice for African Americans in a mortgage to get 3 quotes, because there has been a history of African Americans, regardless of credit score. So don't let people say, but we have lower credit scores on average. But they've done studies. Wells Fargo has been the most recent one where they've shown that 50% of refinance applications with good credit scores and all of that got denied by Wells Fargo. And that's been in like the last 2 to 3 years. So just make sure that you're always, I don't care if it's a refinance or if it's a mortgage, you're getting 3 quotes from 3 different lenders. That's the best way you're going to avoid paying a higher interest rate or any kind of discrimination or whatever. Because what happens is that sometimes some lenders only work. We still live in very segregated communities. So sometimes those lenders only work in certain communities. They may offer their clients different mortgage products than they would offer other clients. So you just want to be very mindful of that. And the way you protect that the most, to me, is to make sure that you're shopping around. You don't just go to one lender and say, I'm going to use you. You really shop that rate and you get multiple quotes. All right, so let me see. All right, so during this time, it's a good idea to get FHA or conventional. That depends. What happens a lot of times with FHA, because it's easier to qualify, they don't have their DTI ratio usually is a little bit higher than conventional and some other things, that it's usually easier for you to qualify for FHA, and your approval amount usually is more with FHA. Now, most recently, conventional has come out. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they back conventional loans. They have come out with some new guidelines, like including your rent payments and that sort of thing. So that's a change with Freddie and Fannie Mae to try to make it a little bit better for some people to get approved for mortgages. But so there's not a good answer for this, because especially in this market we've been in, a lot of people didn't want FHA loans because of the amendatory clause. So I have 2 videos on my channel that I would advise you to watch. One is conventional or FHA. I compare the 2, and then why a seller may not want your FHA loan. So that's going to be FHA loans overall are more expensive because they come with higher mortgage insurance premiums that you have to pay upfront and every month. And you don't get rid of mortgage insurance with FHA unless you refinance the loan. Where conventional, when you have 20% equity in the home, you can get rid of the PMI or the mortgage insurance. So that's one of the major differences. But again, watch those 2 videos, because this answer is going to be different for everybody. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate all the love in the chat. Christina, calling out people. Wells Fargo did well. Redlining, yes. I want to make sure Wells Fargo never gonna be a sponsor of my channel. But again, if you want to sponsor me, Wells Fargo, please come. We'll have one of your people on the channel. But yes, but and all banks did. I mean, any major bank, even if they've changed their names now, a lot of the banks did redlining at that time. All right. So, should I find a condo with a low HOA? Yes, because one thing that's not going to change, your mortgage may change because you'll pay it down or pay it off. But if you pay off your mortgage, that HOA fee is going to be the same or higher over time. So you want to make sure you're not getting into a condo, because I've seen a lot of condos in Atlanta. The condo might be $150,000, like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo, $150,000, and then the HOA fee is $1,200 a month. So you have to be very careful as far as that with affordability, because condos, they can foreclose. I've done that video too. HOA can foreclose on you for non-payment of those HOA fees. So you want to make sure that you are doing your total affordability, and that you're getting the minutes from the condo association meetings, because a lot of times they will talk about, increasing the HOA amount, who's paying, who's not paying. And if there's a lot of delinquencies in a condo community, meaning a lot of people are not paying, then more than likely your assessment is going to increase over time. And then sometimes they may have a special assessment. Like there's sometimes they want like 40,000 people, $40,000 per resident of a condo to do some repairs and that sort of thing. So be very cautious when you're doing condos. If you have a realtor, make sure and you're only doing condos, make sure that they're a condo specialist and they know what they're doing and the appropriate paperwork to ask for. Okay, somebody said this is systematic racism that so many folks don't want to be honest about. And it is. Like, if you really do your research on housing in America, I just wanted to get the basics out here. But if you really do the research on housing in America, it was systematic. It was very deliberate ways of keeping people from definitely certain communities, definitely from owning property. And again, that led to, because again, most of the wealth are in people's homes in the form of equity. So that does create less wealth in the Black community by not owning as many homes. All right, yes. Let me see. Let's see what else. Sorry, I skipped down to the bottom. Put your questions in it. I'm going to be here till 7, so I'll try to get as many people as possible. What are your thoughts on manufactured homes? Sorry. All right, so I think they're good for affordability, but you have to realize with manufactured homes that they're not, more than likely, unless the land becomes valuable, they're not going to increase in value like a traditional slab-built, stick-built home will. And when I'm talking about manufactured, we're talking about mobile homes, or what used to be called mobile homes. They're now called manufactured homes. In general, they don't increase in value over time. So it's an affordable housing option. But if you're going to say that, you're saying, I'm going to do this for affordability, I want to live here. If you don't own the land that the manufacturing home is on, that's more expensive for you as well. So you want to make sure. One of the things, my grandmother in retirement, so she's somebody that's from Sanford, North Carolina, moved to the Bronx. That's why I'm from the Bronx. She moved to the Bronx for work, like a lot of people from the South did. But when she retired, she came back to my grandfather's land that's in Perry, Georgia. So if anybody's in Perry, Georgia, we're probably related. So she came back and she put a manufactured home on the land that the family owns. So anybody in the family is allowed to come and put their manufactured home on the land. So that was a very affordable option for her. But it wasn't like now that manufactured home is worth 2 or 3 times what it's worth. It's probably worth a lot less. But as far as, again, affordability, it might have been like $300 a month because the land was free. You're paying for the manufactured home. So it was a very affordable option for her. But don't think that's not a wealth. To me, it's not a wealth building tool. Unless you're saving enough money and you're going to be investing and buying, real estate and, another way to build wealth. So I think manufactured housing is more of a affordability tool, but as a long-term like wealth builder, probably not as much. All right, so let's see. Okay, is there a concern of investors buying an abundance of new construction in bulk? Now, in Atlanta, and I think in a lot of places, investors kind of have backed off the market a little bit too right now. They're not, I think we're down 70% in investor purchases in the last month, because I think they're backing out. Their hedge funds are getting a little bit nervous about the housing market right now. But they have done this in the past. I think they drop and they may come in and buy whatever existing real estate that they cannot sell. And I think you don't want to be living as a residential buyer. You do not want to live in a predominantly rental community. It will impact your housing value. I know there was a subdivision here that I think the entire thing was bought by investors. They're not going to keep, for the most part, making some assumptions, but they've proven to be true. A lot of them are not going to keep up the property. A lot of renters, because they're renting, they don't care as much about upkeep sometimes. And you have a lot of them in one area. I can tell almost very quickly if a neighborhood is primarily rented or primarily homeowners. It's just a different feel because there's a certain pride in ownership that they don't have. So when things need repair, they're just waiting for the landlord or whatever, the company to come fix it versus coming out there themselves or mowing their own lawn or raking their own grass or, that sort of thing. So I think this could happen if, builders have the one thing that builders are not doing really. Builders are not building just to build. They're building by contract for the most part. Like they're not just building spec homes where they're going to have all of that inventory just left over. But I think that can be a concern in some areas. All right, let's see. Thank you so much. Please save this live. This live will be saved on the channel. I think when I stop, like when I press stop of the broadcast, it may take like YouTube maybe, 10 minutes or something, but it'll be available again. All right, so everybody says I look fine to them. It's kind of late now, but hopefully it cleared up. I am hardwired with my Wi-Fi, so I made sure I did that. So thanks to everyone who put that as good. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you for joining me. Okay. Let's see. I think a lot of Black millennials are not buying homes because of student debt. We carry a lot of it. Yes. And that's why I think I'm very sensitive about student loans as well. I started out at HBCU, Hampton University, and I started there. And I realized after my first year, I was like, okay, I'm going to be like in significant debt if I stay here for 4 years. And I have like a partial scholarship. And so Georgia had the Hope Scholarship, where as long as you graduated with a B or higher, you can go to school for free. So I transferred from Hampton University to a state school, but I do understand student loan debt. Like I understand it, and it is a problem. My husband went to Morehouse and he stayed all 4 years, so we get it. It is going to be a challenge. If you're in public service, this is for everybody. Make sure you have signed the waiver for public loan forgiveness. It expires October 31st, or the waiver is going to be available until October 31st. So if you're in anything, government, nonprofit, teaching, nurses at a hospital, a state hospital, you can qualify for public loan forgiveness, but you're going to have to start attacking some of those student loans. I wouldn't pay anything before August 31st, just in case there's some kind of loan forgiveness, but a lot of you owe a lot more than $10,000. So I would try to make sure you don't qualify for any of the forgiveness. Make sure you're not eligible for income-based programs, that sort of thing. But just know that because of some of the changes, FHA changes, conventional loan changes, they will count your income-based repayment. So if you're paying, $10 a month on income-based repayment, then that's going to be calculated into your DTI ratio. So know that you can still get a house with student loans, but again, with interest rates being higher and you have student loans, so that all may play a role. But I would say just keep kind of your eye on the prize. You want to make sure that you're budgeting, you make it happen, and you put home ownership, like how can I achieve this? Have a plan in place to do so, even if it's not your dream home, because a lot of millennials, and I'm not a millennial. I know some of y'all think I'm young, but I'm not that young. I'm not a millennial, but a lot of millennials that I work with or that I'm the realtor for, like everything has to be Instagram nice. Like they want to be able to floss in front of the pictures and show their house. It's a different generation. Like when I bought a house, I just wanted a house. I wasn't like, it has to have quartz countertops, has to have white, and I want to have this in the back, and I got to get this from, all this fancy stuff. And I think it's part of like the show generation. I got to show what I have. But at a younger age, just acquire a property, because in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you'll be happy that you did. All right. So thank you. So, my siblings and I are paying my parents' home taxes and insurance, and baby, the insurance is sky high. Yes. Now, home values have increased. So with that insurance, the insurance is going to increase with those home values. So make sure that a lot of people, if it's still in your parents' names and they're still alive, and they probably qualify for a senior exemption. So make sure that it depends on state, but in a lot of counties in Georgia and a lot of counties in other parts of the country, there's senior exemptions where seniors don't have to pay like some of the taxes, definitely like the school tax, that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that if you have parents that are in their home and they're paying like high taxes, make sure that they are getting whatever exemption that they qualify for. And if there are different levels of age group in the house, like I called the tax commissioner's office before, and I said, well, what if I have if somebody's like 70 and the other person is 30 living in the house and they both own the house, would I still get the exemption? At the time, they said it goes by the oldest person. So you want to make sure that you're getting all the homestead exemption taxes exemptions that you qualify for, because either they're going to freeze your taxes and not increase them as you age, or they're going to eliminate a lot of them altogether. So make sure that you are making sure you qualify for all of those homestead exemptions. How do you buy the course? Thank you for asking. It is in all of my, in the description of all of my videos, and I'll put it in this description. It'll say like, purchase my first time home buyers course. You'll see it in every video on my channel. Thank you so much. Thank you. I saw your video on home building. I'll watch it again. I appreciate that. All right, let's see. Let me see. What is the interest rate for USDA loans? Seems like lately the property taxes are going up. Okay, so property taxes are going up with the values of homes. So over the last probably 2 years, a lot of property values have like gone up 40 to 50%, depending on where you live. So property taxes, I'm doing an easy example, but if property taxes are 10% of the value, if your home used to be worth, $100,000, that would have been $1,000. I'm sorry, is that 1,000? 10%? No, that'll be 10,000. Not that high, but you get what I'm saying. So if your property has doubled in value, say it's 1%. If it's doubled in value, now you are at $2,000. So like your property taxes have now doubled. So that's why property taxes are going up, even if the rate of tax doesn't increase, because that property is worth more, then your taxes on that property will increase. So you want to be mindful of that. Usually in all jurisdictions, when the tax assessment comes out, you have an opportunity to dispute the value that they're placing on that house, because they don't go to every house and do an appraisal. They kind of do an appraisal of that area and kind of do it by square footage. So if you think they're overvaluing your property, then you definitely want to do you want to have a real estate agent help you, take some comps from your neighborhood, and you want to dispute that value. So you can do that. But I don't know the current rate on a USDA loan, but they're going up with the rest. Like if FHA is going up and conventional is going up and VA is going up, USDA is going up too. But ask a lender about that. And then on my last video, I gave you 3 websites to go to track interest rates. So please watch that video. First time in the chat. Hi, D. I'm 28. Do you have any tips for me prepping myself on buying a home? I have 4 small children. So I do have a lot of videos about getting ready for the home buying process, making sure your credit is good. So I have a credit playlist. So that's one thing you want to make sure you have. Then you want to make sure that you have a significant down payment. I recommend 7% of whatever that home price is. And then I have a whole playlist on down payment assistance. So if you need some help saving that down payment, getting that money together, then I advise you to watch that so you can know, okay, I need my down payment, but I might be able to have some type of down payment assistance to help me with that. And then I'll make sure my credit's together and that I've saved some money. Because I know it can be difficult with, small children to save as much money with everything being more expensive, food, gas, housing. But one of the other things I feel like I did too early on is as soon as I graduated from college, I moved out of my mom's house. That was an opportunity. I should have stayed like 2 or 3 years, like saved up, paid off everything, those sorts of things. So in this economy, if you have that family support and you're able to do that, especially with 4 small children, and that's one thing we're talking about, Juneteenth and the Black community. That's one of the things that we did almost like it was nothing for you to still live with your parents to be helping you until you were able to get on your feet. So I don't think if you're able to have that community support, maybe you say, I'm going to move back home for a year. I'm going to move back home for 2 years so I can reestablish myself and my family. I don't think don't be so proud. Sometimes we're so independent that it's hard to do that. But when you have a vision in mind and you're like, okay, I'm going to, in order for me to get here, I might have to take a step back. I may have to ask for some help and say, okay, I didn't get my own room till I was 14. I stayed with my sister until my mom bought a house when I was 14. So, we need some bunk beds. We got another bed here, or we need to, collapse some things. You have to make some sacrifices especially if your income is not high enough to support that. to say, okay, let me save, let me pay off some things, let me get my credit together. And then in 2 years, the sacrifices that you and your children will make will pay off in the long run, hopefully with a home. So I think that's my advice for you. Thank you so much for joining me in the chat. All righty. I agree. A history I could have gained from just a little conversation. Yes. So please talk to your grandparents, your great grandparents. I really appreciate it. Lamara, this is my cousin. She's my Carrie cousin. So hi, cousin. Congratulations. Thank you for all your educational information on home buying. Thanks, Lamara. I really, really appreciate that. All right, let's see. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, let's call out everybody. You never know, y'all might need a sponsorship, but Wells Fargo, if y'all want to come to me and talk about your new programs or whatever you have to right some of these wrongs, come holler at me. But yes, Bank of America and Wells Fargo do have a history of not being the best in a lot of areas. All right. Yes. And I can't, again, there's also a lot of discrimination in appraisals. I think we've seen that over the last 2 years because it's been on the forefront of a lot of people. It's something called, what am I trying to say? The wrong name for it, but basically making sure that you erase the blackness of your home, if that's a word. But, sometimes in general in real estate, you want a very neutral house. You don't want to have a lot of personal pictures, personal things. But I think when you have a lot of African-American households feel this a little bit more because they don't want, unfortunately, like appraisers, because when they change the pictures to a white family living there, that automatically unconscious bias or conscious bias says, oh, this must be worth more. So, and I'm supposed to have an appraiser on my channel soon to kind of answer some of those questions. But yeah, there has been some discrimination. There's a lot of stories on it about discrimination, racial discrimination in appraisals. When one appraiser comes and it's one value, another appraisal comes and it's like a significantly different value. All righty. Thank you, Stella. Says, my dad has told me lots of stories about how he grew up. He also told me he picked cotton too. A lot of those stories were heartbreaking. At the same time, I'm grateful to know, yes, because you appreciate everything, I think, a lot more when you know the sacrifices of your parents. All right, the Lone Star is saying something. FHA loans allow for a higher DTI. Many borrowers with good credit and income use FHA because they may have more debt. Good to know. So yeah, so sometimes you could qualify for both. You'll qualify for FHA and you'll qualify for conventional, but the FHA approval amount will be more. So people lean toward the FHA approval because they can qualify for a more expensive home. Thank you, Lone Star. All righty. All right. I would like to buy new construction in the future. Do you recommend buying the land first and shop for a contractor, or should I purchase the land and plan to build with the same loan? So I did a video called Building a House on Your Own Land. It's going to be too long for me to answer right now. But if you watch that video, Shaheedah, you will be able to find out answers to all of those questions and how you should probably go about doing it. All right, a quick question. When I shopped multiple lenders, they were all in the same week, same month, but it hit my credit report separately. I thought that credit bureau is supposed to only do one hit. Now, when we're talking about a hit, they'll all be reported. Like they will show as an inquiry, but as far as your score, the impact to your score should have only been once, and maybe 2 to 5 points. It depends on how high your credit is in the first place sometimes. But it shouldn't be like, okay, if one inquiry is 5 points and the other one is 5 points, the other one is 5 points. All of them will show on your credit report as an inquiry, but the impact to your credit score should be impacting you with only one inquiry. So if you feel like it impacted your credit score more than that, then that's something you need to probably discuss with the credit bureaus. But yeah, the credit scoring model allows for rate shopping in mortgages and home loans. Mortgages and auto loans. So when you are shopping your rate, they look at all of those as one inquiry. But if you look on your credit report, you might see each mortgage company listed. But as far as your score, it should only impact you one time. Okay, JB is in this chat. My landlord explained to me that she believes her property was appraised incorrectly because of the neighborhood location and her race. Yeah, and sometimes, like I said, a lot of cities are very segregated. So, and a lot of the percentage of African-American appraisers are very low. So the chance of you getting an African-American appraiser to come to an African-American community is usually low. So you don't know how familiar sometimes that appraiser is with that community. That's another part of it. But you always can dispute an appraisal. But again, I don't want to get into all of that right now, but just make sure that you don't have to take that. So if they come out and they appraise your property, if you're doing a refinance or if you're doing something, that's usually what you're getting the appraisal for as a homeowner. You're getting a refinance probably, of your property. You can get another one, go to another lender, dispute the appraisal. And that's what those other people have done because they didn't, the value came in much lower than they anticipated. All right, let's see. All right. Yes. Nick says we need more Black appraisers. That's very true. If anybody knows one, put them in the comments. All right. Let me see. Thank you, Lone Star. So Lone Star's in the chat if y'all have any loan questions. All righty. Can I leave the link to the videos you mentioned? I mentioned so many, but yes, I can. I will leave the link of the videos that I mentioned in this. It may not be until tomorrow though, when everything's like, when they repost, they'll repost this video soon. But as far as all the links, just look back tomorrow to make sure all the links are there. All right, let me see. Angelina. Hi, Angelina Smith. I'll be a first-time homeowner, but the market sucks right now. Okay, that's very true. And I'm getting so discouraged. You think I should keep my eye on the market? All right. Do you foresee changes in rates and prices? Okay, this is Shaheedah Hill's crystal ball. Okay, number one, I did a video very recently on what I think. Let me try to get up a little bit higher. I did a video on that. Basically, I recommended there's no rush because home values in this summer are not expected to appreciate like June, July. Like you're not going to get like a 10% jump in prices right now as interest rates go up. Now, interest rates may settle back down. Okay, so we're at the low sixes. Our interest rates are tied to the 10-year yield, which is a whole nother story. But if you look up the 10-year yield, that's how interest rates are derived, I guess. Okay. So when you're watching that rate as it increases, mortgage rates will increase. And, the Fed increasing rates, yes, will have an impact in general on all of those rates. So I don't think you're in a rush right now, but I do think that you should stay in the market to be aware if there is a house that, doesn't have a lot of offers. My next video is probably going to be, how do you know a house doesn't have any offers? Because you can negotiate with that seller, because if you don't have any offers, then they only have you. And, if they want to sell that house, they're going to have to negotiate with you. The reason why the market was not good is because, for buyers at least, is because the sellers had so many options. But now the sellers are having fewer and fewer options, and they're more likely to negotiate with you. They're more likely to bring down their property to the market price at least. So you do have an opportunity, but it's different in every market. But you want to look, if you want to take a little bit of a break, maybe come back in July, August. I think the true test will be in September after school starts in most markets. So late August, early September, they're going to be the people that had to buy because of school, they'll be out of the market. They will be closed or change their mind, right? So then you just have sellers that still need to sell, and you have buyers that still want to buy, but you don't have those people, I have to buy before school starts. So I think the true test, if home prices are going to go down, because you're going to have an interest rate hike in July. And after that interest rate hike comes in July, the other people may leave the market then. And then you have a lot of people getting out of the market that had to buy before school started. Then you just have sellers that have to sell and buyers that might still want to buy. And that's when I think we'll be able to see our prices going to come down significantly at that time. So yeah, that's what I foresee. But I would say still stay in the market. I listed a house on Friday. My client took it off the market. They were going back and forth as to whether or not they want to sell. But I only have one showing. And in the past, this house would have been like sold by, Sunday. I had one showing I listed it on Friday, one showing over the weekend. That's highly unusual. And then the showing feedback was, oh, we like it, but we're still looking. So, there are definitely fewer. This house was listed for $450, but there are definitely fewer buyers looking for homes right now. So you may have more opportunity in this market. All righty. Thank you. I want to tell you, thank you again. You were very helpful when I purchased my home in, I hope I'm saying it right, Rajay. You were very helpful when I purchased my house in 2021, and I did get a good rate. Thank you so much. The Lone Star says you have 45 days to shop lenders. I always tell people that I see 15 sometimes, I see 30, I see 45. I'm like, get it all in 2 weeks if you can. But he said you have 45 days to shop lenders. Check out the Lone Star, his channel. You should be able to click on it if he has some videos on there. Thank you so much. It's 7 o'clock. I really appreciate everybody coming on this live stream with me. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Please like, or maybe I'm putting you out there like you have a channel, Lone Star. Just here said they can't find you. But if you don't have a YouTube channel, the Lone Star, I'm assuming you're a lender. Please go ahead and start one. We need more, definitely more YouTube channels out there, definitely. So make sure you're making one. Thank you so much. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Make sure you know your family's history in home ownership, and make sure you teach that history to your children, your grandchildren, so everybody knows. Thanks so much. I appreciate all of you, and I love you too very much. Thank you, Justine. Justine. I'm putting right here. I'm trying to put you up here. Hey, thank you so much. Good night, everybody.